Imagine tonight, before you close your eyes, you speak only 7 words. 7. Not a long prayer, not a secret mantra, not even some ancient formula of esoteric wisdom, just one simple, direct sentence that, if spoken consciously, can change the course of your unconscious, and with it the quiet outcome of your days. Carl Gustav Jung once said that a mind which falls asleep in peace creates a reality more in tune with the soul. But most people fall asleep at war with themselves, with guilt, with worry, with unspoken words, with old fears that echo even louder in the silent dark. What Jung discovered is this: the unconscious does not rest. It works while you sleep. And if the last message it receives is destructive, then it dreams of destruction. It shapes exactly that. It brings exactly that to life. But there is an antidote, a simple verbal code, 7 words. These words are not magical by themselves. Their power does not lie in language. It lies in the gesture, in the moment, in the symbol, in what you hand over to your unconscious as the final imprint of the day. Jung called this A, something that crosses the threshold between consciousness and sleep, embedding itself like a seed into the architecture of the psyche. This is why so many people wake up tired despite sleeping. Why they dream of loss, betrayal, unexplained fear, because, without knowing it, they fed their mind with anger, with worry, with resentment, only minutes before closing their eyes. But if you speak these 7 words with intention, your unconscious listens and begins to answer, not because it is magic, but because it is connection, because it is symbolic, because it is surrender. In this video, we will uncover what lies behind these 7 words. We will explore what Jung saw as the passage between the I and the self, between who you think you are and who you really are. And in the end, you will know the sentence that can change the way your soul rests and the way it awakens. But before we go further, take a deep breath. This video is not just information. It is an invitation, a reunion, a small initiation, a reminder that you have more power than you believe, even in the act of falling asleep. The moment you close your eyes may seem ordinary, but to the unconscious it is a ritual. You say farewell to the outer world, disconnect your body from wakefulness, and descend into the most symbolic, mysterious realm of human existence, sleep. And Jung said, in that exact moment, the unconscious begins to work with the material you leave at the surface of your soul. It invents nothing from nothing. It shapes what you give it. If you go to sleep in anger, the unconscious builds defenses. If you go to sleep in fear, it activates escape. If you go to sleep in guilt, it reinforces the inner judgment you already carry. But if you go to sleep with acceptance, with surrender, with gratitude, then it begins to restructure, to heal, to reveal. Jung saw sleep as a channel of dialogue, an inner temple where the self speaks to you through symbols, dreams, images, and where you, too, can speak back. Not with complicated words, but with something far stronger intention. And this is why the 7 words work. Not because they change the outer universe, but because they transform your inner universe. Jung believed that the unconscious needs living images, symbols with emotional weight, small gestures that carry great truths. When you speak something with presence, the unconscious listens. When you close your eyes with humility and speak to the soul, even if you don't know exactly who you're speaking to, that gesture itself is already a prayer, a bridge, a healing. It does not matter whether you believe in God, in energy, in quantum physics, or simply in yourself. What matters is what you hand over in that final moment of the day. Because the unconscious is like soil. It does not choose what grows, it simply grows what you plant. If you plant worry, you harvest nightmares. If you plant trust, you awaken answers. And when you understand this, you begin to tend to your sleep like a garden. The 7 words you will learn here are like symbolic seeds. They do not solve everything, but they awaken something. And that awakening changes everything. Because there is a kind of peace you do not fight for, you receive it by surrendering, by speaking, by accepting, and maybe you are only 1 sentence away from it. You may wonder how 7 such simple words could ever make a real difference. The truth is, the power lies not in the number, not in the sentence alone. It lies in how the unconscious interprets the gesture. Carl Jung said that the soul does not transform by force. It opens through closeness, through listening, through symbols that touch, not commands that push. This is why even the most beautiful phrases in the world mean nothing if spoken mechanically, emptily, without presence. But 7 words, spoken truthfully, carry the power to break through what once seemed unbreakable. The rational mind resists change, programmed as it is to control, to protect, to repeat what it knows, even when it no longer serves. And this is exactly why, when we lie down at night, that inner control seems to loosen for a brief moment, and in that space between the outer and the inner world, we can plant something new. Many spiritual traditions speak of words before sleep, not as superstition, but as a code, a symbolic gesture, a bridge. The 7 words that are revealed are not magic, but they stand for a deep inner reprogramming, because when we speak them, we send a message to the unconscious. I accept living differently. I choose to rest in peace. I allow the best to come to me. When this message is repeated over 3 nights, not as duty, but as surrender, something happens not necessarily on the outside, but within, where everything begins, dreams shift, the body rests more deeply. Negative thoughts lose their grip upon waking, and over time, we begin to meet ourselves with greater kindness, and the world reflects that back to us. Jung believed, when the unconscious senses that a new pattern is being anchored with intention and symbolic repetition, it responds. And it responds not with promises, but with movement, with synchronicities, with encounters and insights. It is as if the universe says, I have heard you. Now go on. And going on becomes lighter, more whole, more connected with what was always there, but which we can only hear when the inner noise falls silent. These 7 words are only the beginning. Jung did not see the unconscious as a garbage dump of the mind, but as a living organism, a symbolic field in constant dialogue with consciousness. More than that, he saw it as the cradle of the soul, the source from which dreams, intuition, signs, fears, and our deepest inner callings arise. That is why speaking to the unconscious is not about giving orders to a machine, but about whispering something sacred into an inner temple. These words must not be spoken casually, not out of obligation, not like a spell, but as an intimate gesture, as an act of listening, as a reverent moment with yourself. Imagine lying down, turning off the light, lowering the noise, and choosing not just to sleep, but to let go. You breathe deeply, feel your body against the mattress, and with a quiet heart you speak the sentence, 7 words, then you simply rest. You do not expect a miracle. You demand no result. You do not force yourself into positive thinking. You simply allow the unconscious to take in these words like a seed, for it understands through images, sensations, emotions, not through logic. Jung saw sleep as a gateway through which the ego falls silent, and the soul can step forward. Everything handed over in that moment remains and begins to sprout. People forget that sleep is not a pause, but a process, a dialogue, a quiet journey inward. When we end the day with words that hold us instead of condemn us, something changes. We stop trying to control everything with the mind and hand the wheel over to a deeper, wiser, older part of ourselves. Jung called this the return to the self, the center of the psyche, the part within us that knows, even when we have forgotten. When you begin to sleep in peace, the self draws closer, dreams turn into messages, thoughts lose their weight, the soul breathes freely. It is only 7 words, but in the right moment, spoken with presence and surrender, they become more than a sentence. They become a decision, a quiet pact with yourself, and that is already the beginning of every true transformation. The time has come. You have understood that these 7 words are not magical in themselves, but that their power lies in the moment they are spoken, in the way they are felt, in the act of surrender with which they are offered. Carl Gustav Jung said that true healing does not come from grand theories, but from small encounters with truth, and that sometimes a single, simple sentence can break an entire cycle of self-sabotage. So now take a deep breath and imagine yourself lying in bed, the room dark, the world outside silent, and there, between your body and the quiet, you whisper, "I accept, I trust, I let go. I thank you. Good night." 7 words. I accept, because resisting what already is only exhausts you. Acceptance does not mean giving up. It means saying, "I see what is, and I welcome it." The unconscious needs this permission to make space for the new. I trust, because the mind lives in fear, but the soul knows. Trust means letting the armor fall and saying, "Even if I don't understand everything, I move forward." It is the key that dissolves excessive control. I let go, because transformation does not happen under surveillance. Letting go means releasing what hurts, even if you don't yet know what comes after. It is the bravest act of the night. I thank you, because where there is gratitude, the unconscious begins to bloom. Gratitude transforms lack into fullness, absence into presence, and is the balm for all the broken parts within you. Good night, because even that, spoken consciously, is sacred. You are not just going to sleep, you are returning to your innermost space and saying, "I am here, in peace. For today, it is enough." 7 words, 3 breaths, 1 surrender. You can write them on a note and place it on your nightstand, repeat them softly, or simply feel them in thought. What matters is the gesture, the moment, the intention. For in the end, this sentence is not here to change the world, but to remind you who you are before the world makes you forget. And when you fall asleep this way, with a quiet heart and an unconscious held with care, the universe listens, because as Jung said, the outer world is a mirror of the inner, and when something within you shifts, sooner or later what surrounds you shifts as well. On the first night, you may only feel a small relief, a deeper breath, a less restless sleep. On the second, the thoughts will not come as strongly. The body will settle more quickly. The heart that once raced without reason will slow to the rhythm of your breath. On the third night, something inside begins to understand that it is being heard, not by the world out there, but by you yourself. Jung said that much of human suffering comes from inner neglect, from the silence between what the soul longs for and what the mind ignores. But when you repeat these 7 words, even softly, you pick up that thread again, you rebuild the bridge, you find your way back to yourself, and that rediscovery changes everything. You notice anger fading without effort, resentment losing its grip. That problem which yesterday seemed enormous looks smaller today. Not because it disappeared, but because your perspective shifted. It is as if the universe says, now that you hear yourself, I can show you. And it does show, in subtle details, in a dream that carries an answer, in an unexpected encounter, in a message that seems to appear from nowhere, in a thought that once pulled you down and now just drifts past like a cloud. These are not accidents, they are synchronicities. Jung believed that when you align your unconscious with a new intention, the outer world responds with signs, not because everything magically changes, but because you begin to notice what was hidden before. You become lighter, clearer, calmer, and what once ruled you no longer has power over you, because the soul has found its voice again, because the unconscious has been accepted, because sleep is no longer an escape, but a homecoming. 7 words, 3 nights, and a beginning. Do not expect applause or spectacular miracles, but watch how your energy shifts, how people respond differently to you, how what once felt out of balance slowly realigns, not because the outer world has changed, but because you have changed quietly where it all begins. Carl Gustav Jung did not see sleep merely as rest for the body, as a journey of the soul. As the world falls silent, the unconscious awakens. And it is in that space, without control, without masks, without roles, that true transformation begins. Jung said that in the stillness of night, the psyche reveals what the day has concealed. It shows images, symbols, memories, hidden desires. All the things you did not want to face return, in dreams, sensations, or quiet intuitions. And that is exactly why this moment is so powerful. Because when you say goodbye to the day with a peaceful sign, with 7 consciously chosen words, you are not just saying good night. You are whispering to the unconscious, I am ready to listen. I am ready to return to myself. This act is the beginning of what Jung called individuation. To individuate does not mean to isolate or to be special. On the contrary, it means to become whole again, to reunite the forgotten, repressed, and lost parts within yourself. And that begins with small gestures. It begins when you stop fighting yourself in sleep. When you decide that the last thing your soul will hear before rest will not be guilt, fear, or self-reproach, but acceptance, trust, surrender, and gratitude. And even if at first it feels like only a symbolic ritual, with time you will realize that this moment is more genuine than many of the words you speak automatically during the day, because it comes from you, with presence, with truth, without audience, without facade, and the unconscious recognizes it. In that very moment, it begins to respond, with images, with insights, by soothing old memories, rearranging thoughts, cleansing patterns that are long outdated. The soul does not need grand formulas. It needs to be heard, given space, met with real presence. And when you sleep in peace, it begins to bloom. When you sleep in faith, even if you don't know in what, it answers. And when you sleep in gratitude, even for what you do not yet understand, life begins to speak to you in a new way. For now you no longer sleep to escape, you sleep to come home. And on that return journey, no matter how long it has taken, the soul always knows the way back. The next morning you wake up differently, not because everything around you has changed. It is subtle, almost invisible. But suddenly you notice that your first thought was not fearful, that the coffee tastes calmer, that the traffic does not cut as deeply, that an old memory may arise, but it no longer drags you down. This is how the unconscious responds. Through atmosphere, through tone, through the way you treat yourself, and allow yourself to be treated. Jung said that life is no longer a burden when the unconscious is united with consciousness, but becomes a journey that can be understood, and you begin to feel it in small things. You choose your words more carefully. You forgive more easily. You blame yourself less. Decisions that once stirred inner conflict suddenly feel lighter. You allow yourself to breathe before reacting, to listen before judging, to wait before giving up, because something inside you has found order, and not because you watched a video or read a book, but because, for 3 nights in a row, you spoke with your soul, with yourself, with that which has always lived within you. Jung said that suffering becomes healing when it is met with love, and that love begins where you stop abandoning yourself. These words are not magic. They are reminders. Reminders that you deserve rest, that you deserve peace, that you deserve to be heard. And when you fall asleep with that intention, the world awakens differently the next morning. Not because the world has changed, but because you are no longer the same. You become more whole, and the world, in response, becomes more livable. The same situations appear. The same challenges meet you, but you no longer walk into them in the same way. Because now, there is a center, a root, an inner listening. And that center was born there in the stillness of your room, in the last breath of the night, and in the 7 words you had the courage to speak. Jung said that what you repeat with intention becomes seed in the unconscious, and with time, roots grow. Roots strong enough to carry your life even through stormy days. That is why these 7 words need not be spoken for only 3 nights. You can continue. You can turn them into your own ritual, a quiet pact with the night, a daily moment when the world fades, and you finally hear yourself again. There is no right time, no ideal posture, no duty. There is only this moment. A dark room, a tired body, and a soul ready to be received. And in that act, you remember that you don't have to carry everything, that you don't have to understand everything, that you don't have to solve everything before you sleep. You only need to accept, to trust, to let go, to give thanks, and to wish yourself a good night. For when you sincerely wish yourself good night, not as a phrase, but as a quiet blessing, you are saying to the universe, "Today I treat myself with respect. Today I accept myself. Today I grant myself peace." And the universe, which hears what comes from the soul, responds, not with applause, but with synchronicities, with clearer paths, with the right encounters, with a gentleness that once seemed impossible. Jung knew, symbolic repetition heals, because each time you repeat a gesture with intention, you strengthen a new truth within you. And with time, what began as a ritual becomes part of who you are. You grow calmer, more present, more whole. Not because you learn to control the world, but because you learn to trust something greater, and you began to speak to it in silence. The 7 words are the beginning. The practice is the path. The change is inevitable. For every soul that is heard begins to bloom, and every night in which you accept yourself becomes an entire darkness in which the unconscious works for you. Maybe no one notices. No one knows that you began to repeat 7 words before sleep. No one sees that they became a quiet medicine for your soul. But you will know. You will feel it in your body, in your breath, in the way you respond to the world. You will notice that something has shifted, that you no longer abandon yourself so easily, that you listen more, demand less. That pain may still be there, but now it is received, no longer denied. Carl Jung said that true awakening does not come with noise, not with thunder and lightning. It arrives on some quiet night, when you suddenly realize peace has found space in you again, And it happened just so, with 7 words, with 3 nights, with a gesture that seemed too small to change anything and yet changed everything. For it is not the size of the gesture that transforms, but the truth with which it is made. So if this touched you, if these words opened a window in you where before there was heaviness, guilt, or silence, then share them, not as advice but as seed, because perhaps someone close to you has long been falling asleep at war with themselves. And like you, they only need a reminder, an invitation, a quiet chance to come home. You can be that breath, because sometimes a single sentence spoken with love changes the sound of an entire night. And one night in peace changes the course of a life. Accept, trust, let go. Thank you. Good night. Tonight you have come home.